So just welcoming everybody to this session, and I'm going to again lead us in the song that Reb Irwin sang, this beautiful setting of Naomi's words by our friend Shoshana Jedwab. Please feel free to join me. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you lie, I will lie, beloved. Where you lie, I will lie. Where you lie, I will lie, beloved. Where you lie, I will lie. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Come together, see who's here. Did you want to say anything, Barbara?
Yes, I did, and I was having trouble getting to the place where I could unmute myself.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. My name is Barbara Lesh McCaffrey. I am the Dean of our Lifelong Learning at Ner Shalom. It's my great honor to welcome Rabbi Diane Elliott to join us. She'll be speaking about Ruth's footsteps, widowhood, loss, loneliness, and renewal. And I've got to admit, from the day that her email with that topic landed, I stopped breathing for a few minutes and said, this could not be a more perfect one for this tikkun and for me personally. So I've been very much looking forward to it, probably a bit longer than the rest of you, and I hope we'll all catch up quickly with this. Rabbi Diane Elliott is a teacher, ritual leader, and spiritual director based in the Bay Area who inspires her students and directees to become clearer channels for presence through awareness and movement practices, chant, and nuanced interpretations of Jewish sacred text. She came to the rabbinate some 25 years ago after a career as a modern dancer and somatic movement therapist. Rabbi Diane directs Aleph's Embodying Spirit programs, leads a weekly online healing circle, and serves on the spiritual direction faculty of the Aleph ordination program. She's authored 4 books of poetry, most recently Traces. And you will, if you go back to the page about the tikkun, you'll see her bio, and as part of that bio, you'll be able to access her email. And if you've receiving our e-blasts, you'll see that she's going to be teaching a class in the very near future that I think many of you might be interested in joining, and it's actually going to be in our backyard.
Okay, I think I got it. Okay.
So I'd like to turn this over to Rabbi Diane, and we'll try to end this portion close to 8:30 as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Excuse me, Barbara. Reb Irwin has said 8:25 sharp, but aiming closer to 8:20.
Okay, we will go as close to that as we can. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll just have to say that I had planned for 10 minutes more than that. So I hope you'll forgive me that we're not really I'm going to just present what I have to present, and hopefully there'll be some time for conversation at the end. I don't know if that will be true or not. But if you can hold your questions or your insights, or maybe put them in the chat, or write something down, jot things down, hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end to converse. But other than that, I think I'm going to move right through. So, yeah, I had a slightly different title for this than the one that's
Oh,
in the
sorry.
publicity, but we'll get to that in a moment. I just want to say something that we're going to come back into the Book of Ruth and look again. We'll make another pass through in a deeper way, perhaps, or a different way, or a different layer of some of the texts that we've already looked at together. All of the major figures in the Book of Ruth, Naomi, Ruth, and Orpah, are widows, and the Midrash has it that even Boaz is a widower. Even Boaz has lost his first wife. So as I read Megillat Ruth this year, I was most struck by how the pain and emptiness engendered by the death of a spouse sets in motion this story of loss and grief, love and redemption. Having lost my own husband, Bert, almost 2 years ago, I suddenly saw this brief tale. It's a mere 4 chapters, a total of 85 verses, as a mini treatise on widowhood, the despair of loss, the progress of grief, and the rebirth of hope. A journey that I am still in the middle of myself, and maybe some of you are as well. So many of my friends of my cohort have lost their spouses as well. Men as well as women, but in my circles, so many more women right now have lost their spouses. And this story is a story that centers women, which is so unusual in our sacred canon, as has already been pointed out by Rabbi Jeremy. So I'm going to invite us to look more closely at the widow's journey as it unfolds in the Book of Ruth, the role of widow in Jewish scriptures, and to share something of how it's been unfolding in my own life through sharing with you a few of the series of 21 poems I've written since my husband's death in June of 2024. I'll just say that you too may have sustained a grievous loss in recent times, and we each grieve in our own way, in our own time, and yet there are some universal flavors and flows of grief that we recognize in one another, and even through the ages, even in this Torah of Ruth. So I hope that this will be a tender Torah of grief. And I invite you to take care of yourself during this next 40 minutes together, to breathe, maybe take a breath right now and release it, a deeper breath, to feel the support of the earth, the ground, underneath your chair, your floor, and feel what you feel as we travel back to an ancient time when widowhood might condemn a woman to a life of loneliness and poverty, or a forced remarriage to a relative of her late husband. That was the Levirate marriage that Rabbi Jeremy mentioned. A time when a woman's honor and security hinged on her marital status, compounding the pain of lost companionship, lost family, and lost love. So I'm going to show some slides for us, and hopefully they'll carry us through this journey together. I'm going to bring up those slides now. Hopefully you'll be able to see everything clearly. So how's that? Can people see okay? Good. Yeah. So we're back to the beginning of the Book of Ruth, the first chapter, and we've already passed through it twice for those of you who have been here since the beginning. And we titled this presentation tonight, at least I thought we titled it, In Ruth's Footsteps, Widowhood, Loss, Grief, and Renewal. But as I delved more deeply into the story and the commentaries, both the ancient and contemporary commentaries, I was struck by how it is Naomi's unbearable pain that drives this story. Yes, all three of the central women figures, Naomi and her two daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah, they're all widows. And yet it is Naomi, who sustains the most complete loss, and it is she whose emotional arc leads us from the devastation of the widow's walk to the improbable joy of a new beginning, a new lineage. And it is she whom we follow from bitter emptiness to an unexpected joyful fullness and renewal. She is, in a sense, the chief mourner here. So let's begin to look again at especially this first chapter of the Book of Ruth. This first chapter we've already passed through a couple of times. Key moments in this journey. And I just want to point out, first let's just invite someone to read again these words that we've already heard a couple times. If someone just wants to unmute and read the English of this little section at the beginning.
I will.
Thank you.
And it happened in the days of the judges that there was famine in the land, and a man went from Bethlehem in Judah to sojourn in the fields of Moab, he, his wife, and his two sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, the name of his wife was Naomi, and the names of their two sons were Machlon and Chilion. Ephratites
Yes.
from Bethlehem in Judah. They came to the fields of Moab, and they stayed there. Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her two sons. They took Moabite wives. The name of the first was Orpah, and the name of the second was Ruth, and they lived there about 10 years. Then both Machlon and Chilion died, and the woman was left bereft of her two children and her husband.
Thank you. Thanks, Eileen. So just letting ourselves feel our way a little bit more into this story, just pointing out a couple things here that I bolded in the Hebrew. So the names, Elimelech, my God is sovereign, Naomi, pleasantness, Machlon and Chilion, the two names of the two sons, are Machlon, sickness. So already in the names, we have a sense that this is not going to end well. And Chilion, pining, because here they have left their homeland. So Ephratite is another name for natives of Bethlehem in that time. And they've had to leave their home. Some of the commentary is that Elimelech has abandoned his homeland in a time of famine, and that he's kind of puffed up with that name of my God is king. And the two sons are sickness and pining, that they are away from their homes. And here we have this word that occurs a couple of times, vatishaer, in reference to Naomi. She is left. She is, sha'er is what remains, left behind. She is, in the words of one of the contemporary commentators that I read, remaindered. She is left behind. So let's move on to this next slide here. And I'm going to ask someone to read the next part of the story. If someone wants to just read the English here. This is a contemporary commentator, Jonathan Maganet, Professor Jonathan. And just the English, if you would. Would someone read?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Barbara.
The story of Naomi's losses begins with the statement in Hebrew that we're not reading. Elimelech died, the husband of Naomi. Here, Elimelech's death is recorded from Naomi's perspective. Nevertheless, the apparent redundancy of the reference to their relationship as husband and wife, already established in the opening verses of the book, allows Rashi to observe, no man dies except to his wife. In other words, the one who truly suffers at the death of a person more than anyone else is their spouse. This brings us directly to a recognition of the pain of Naomi's loss, a pain that will only be compounded by the death of her 2 sons.
Thank you, Barbara. So this is Ein ish met ela leishto. So you may have your own responses to Rashi and to these commentaries. But in my experience of losing my spouse, and also have lost my parents, and the loss of a child, which is perhaps in some ways the hardest of all, Naomi loses both of her sons and her husband, and her life partner. The experience that I've had is that losing a spouse is a particular kind of loss because they are your chosen family. You lose that daily intimacy, maybe the only person with whom you shared the story of your day, the bumps and the bruises that you didn't show the rest of the world, the one who accompanied you through the ups and downs, not always easy, of course, not always smooth and calm, maybe sometimes oppositional, infuriating, but there, that person, day in, day out, morning and night. So I want to share with you a poem that I wrote just 11 days after my husband passed away, and he was sick for about a year, but did quite well until the last couple of months. I was primary caregiver and took care of him at home. And you could think about, we don't know any of the details of how Naomi lost Elimelech, what happened. And it says that they were there 10 years with her sons before she lost them as well. So here's the poem that came to me. Missing. Alone in a house full of you, your shoe, your coffee cup lift me up over the lip of the deep well of wail, tears that tear the heart apart. Down I fall. He's in a better place, they said. You're not, though I am glad you are no longer trapped in that cramped and narrow bed. But no, I say, the best is here, where touch and smell conspire to light a fire, and all the wrangle and murk of night fall away in the light of day, where heat meets cold and we grow old. Where did you go? Breathed back into the womb of earth, birth in reverse, leaving a dearth of you, an empty place, a gaping space where once you sat and ate and laughed. Miraculous, how in the midst of woe, pain falls like rain and makes love's garden grow. And just take a few breaths. The last part of that poem, Naomi isn't there. And she doesn't get there for quite a while. So I wanted to take a look at the the way widows are treated in general in our Torah, in our scripture, just a few little examples. And when I went to Sefaria and Googled almanah, which is Hebrew for widow, hundreds of references came up. And many of them said pretty much the same thing. So I wanted to just share with you, and I'm just going to read these so that we can kind of move forward more quickly. But the first from Exodus, and you'll recognize these quotes because we read them every year and maybe gloss over them a bit. You shall not wrong or oppress a stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You shall not ill-treat any widow or orphan. And then in the book of Deuteronomy, you shall not subvert the rights of the stranger or the fatherless. You shall not take a widow's garment in pawn. So there you can see that the widow is lumped together with the orphan, the fatherless one, and with the ger, the stranger, the convert. So that right there says something to you about what the widow's role was in society, what place, what happened to a woman when she lost her spouse. And we are in the language of our Torah and the language of that time. Here we are dealing with women. And I just found it very interesting that, if, for instance, in the book of Genesis, it's always the women who seem to die first. They're not the ones who are remaindered. Our patriarchs lose their wives. It's later that we talk so much about the woman who's left alone, who's remaindered. In the book of Deuteronomy, again, when you reap the harvest in your field and overlook a sheaf in the field, do not turn back to get to it. It shall go to the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, in order that the eternal your God may bless you in all your undertakings. So there has to be this reminder. Clearly, if this is here in our Torah, there had to be some kind of a reminder that's repeated over and over, that you have to care for the woman who's left on her own, as you care for the orphan, as you care for the stranger. And then here's from the Rambam, Mishnah Torah, commentary on the Torah from, a much later time. When a person eats and drinks in celebration of a holiday, they're obligated to feed converts, orphans, widows, along with others who are destitute and poor. And then it goes on. In contrast, a person who locks their gates, who is stingy and doesn't take care of these folks who are suffering in our society, who are left out along with their own family if they don't feed the poor. And the embittered, that's another word that we'll see applies very much to Naomi, that she uses about herself. Then you're not actually rejoicing in the mitzvah, but you're rather just filling your own stomach. So here is another way that widow appears in our sacred texts, as a metaphor for punishment, for the worst thing that can happen. So from the book of Echa, Lamentations, Echa, Yashva badad ha'ir, alas, lonely sits the city. So here the city of Jerusalem has been besieged, the walls have been breached, the city is burning, the temple has been desecrated, people have been slaughtered, women have been raped, babies killed, people are being dragged away. And here's the metaphor. Lonely sits the city once great with people. She that was great among nations is become like a widow. The princess among states is become a lowly serf. And then this quote from Isaiah, which now applies the same metaphor to the enemies of Israel. And this is, again, a later time when the people are now going to be returned to Jerusalem. And this widowness is almost used as a curse against the enemy. Babylonia, the enemy that destroyed Jerusalem. And now hear this, O pampered one, speaking to the Babylonians, who dwell in security, who think to yourself, I am, and there is none but me. I shall not become a widow, or know loss of children. But these two things shall come upon you. Suddenly, in one day, loss of children and widowhood shall come upon you in full measure. Revenge, tit for tat, despite your many enchantments and all your countless spells. When I lost my husband, a dear friend who had lost her spouse years before turned me on to a book called The Widow's Handbook, Poetic Reflections on Grief and Survival, filled with poems written by women who had lost their spouses. And I thought, no, I don't want to read that book. I don't want to look at that book. But she said, well, if it's not for you, pass it on to someone else. And I opened it up and began to read. And it kind of moves through the journey of widowhood, starting with fresh loss and moving toward adjustment and many beautiful poems. And it was a great comfort to me. And it begins with a long poem that is a composite of many women's experiences, put together by Jacqueline Lapidus, who's one of the editors of this book. So here it is. I'm just going to read it to us. It's a small excerpt. This is a very long poem. Grief takes sadness to new heights and throws it off the cliff. Grief is as big and as whole as love. It is a new tenant in your heart with a long lease. Every move is sad and hard to manage. Getting out of bed in the morning is a tremendous effort. I weep uncontrollably, only to myself. When I speak to him, or you could say when I speak to her, it's in the present tense. Painful as it is, I now prefer loneliness to chatter. After he died, I became invisible. This expresses many nuances of this particular kind of loss. People see you differently. You see yourself differently. There's a loss of identity. And I heard myself saying, I don't know who I am now. So we want to go back to our story of Ruth and Naomi and Orpah in the light of that. And again, we've read this, but if someone else would just quickly unmute and read the English here, and we'll look again at some of this language.
I'll go again.
Thank you.
She then arose along with her daughters-in-law to return from the fields of Moab, for she had heard from the field of Moab that Yudhe-Vavhe had remembered the people, giving them food. So she went out from the place where she had been, her two daughters-in-law with her, and she set out on the road to return to the land of Judah. Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, Go, return, each of you, to the house of your mother. May God deal kindly with you, as you have done with the dead and with me. May God grant that you find rest, each in the home of her husband. She kissed them, and they raised their voices and wept.
Thanks, Eileen. Thank you. And the story goes on. Well, let's just go back for a moment. Look at those words, what she says to Orpah and Naomi. Lechna, shovna. Can you hear what that sounds like? Lechna, go, shovna, return. I really felt that she wants to be alone. She needs to be alone. She's not able to take in their presence, their care, whatever it is, they're following her. And so then it does continue here. Somebody else, would someone else read perhaps, who hasn't read, a voice we haven't heard? Just unmute.
Naomi said, "Turn back, my daughters. Why would you go with me? Do I have any more sons in my womb who could be your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go, for I am too old to have a husband. Even if I were to say, there is hope for me, and even if I were to have a husband tonight, and even if I were to bear sons, would you wait for them until they were grown? Would you shut yourselves off not to marry anyone else? No, my daughters, for I am very bitter on your account, for the hand of God has gone out against me."
Thanks, Ahuva. The hand of God has gone out against me. So here's this scene in which Naomi is wanting to go back to Bethlehem by herself, telling both of her daughters-in-law, which are really the only family she has left now, to leave her. And I'll say that after the funeral of my husband and after the Shiva, when there were people around all the time supporting me, we don't know what kind of support Naomi had, or her daughter-in-laws, probably not much. They were strangers in a strange land. But there were some aspects of my grieving that could only happen in solitude, when I was alone in my house, after everyone left, after all the people had brought food and sat with me and cared for me, now alone in a very quiet house. And maybe it is this aloneness to sink into the depths of her grief that Naomi seeks. I read an essay by Noam Zion called "To Be Remaindered," in which he wrote that Naomi seems to want her daughters-in-law to leave her alone with her own private bitterness and sadness, compounding and deepening her loss by ridding herself of the last reminders of her husband and her children, somehow confirming and even increasing her emptiness and loneliness, to really get into the depths of the grief. And maybe she's protecting herself from further loss by cutting off from relationships that she feels won't last because she imagines her daughters-in-law will go off and remarry. Or maybe she's imagining her homecoming. We talked about this some with Rabbi Jeremy. And the response of the women of Bethlehem to these Moabite women. Maybe they'll be blamed for causing the death of the men in her family, or maybe she will be ashamed that she allowed her sons to marry them. Midrash Ruth in Zuta 1 imagines that Naomi began to blame them for all that had befallen her, as she feared the women of Bethlehem would. But we know that Ruth will not leave her. And these are the words we sang earlier, the beautiful poem. Really, it's a poem. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you lie, I will lie. Your people are my people. I won't leave you. Where you die, I will die. I will take on your God. And you can feel that we don't know all the subtext here. We don't know all the motivation. But this is a fulcrum in the story. This is the beginning of a healing in which Naomi doesn't send her away. And it's pretty laconic what it does say. It doesn't say they went on together. It just says they went on. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped arguing with her, and the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. The two of them went on. So I wanted to give you a little graphic. What was this trip that they did together? Here's the kingdom of Moab, and here's the kingdom of Judah. Here's Jerusalem, and Bethlehem is just here, a little bit southwest of Jerusalem. They had to walk from wherever they were, we don't exactly know where, the plateau, the fields of Moab, around the northern tip of the Dead Sea, and then on through Judah. Two women alone. Can you imagine that? And they had to, it was a very rigorous, here's a little bit of the geography of that, a very rigorous walk. They go from the plateau, they descend below sea level to the Dead Sea as they go around, and then they have to climb up 1,000, 1,500 feet again, a very hard walk. And the text doesn't say anything about what happened on the walk. It's almost as if there's silence. There's silence. And what struck me was that this is a walking Shiva that they do together. We don't imagine, I mean, the commentary imagines, of course, the rabbinic commentary, that Naomi was teaching Ruth all about Judaism and God and Israelite, and during that whole way she was converting her. That's not what I hear. I hear silence. I hear the two of them walking together, the widow's walk, and doing that Shiva, just the way we know in a traditional Shiva that those who come to comfort the mourners come into the house and don't address the mourners, but sit by their sides and wait for them to speak. So at the end of this widow's walk, which would have taken anywhere from 10 days to 2 weeks for them to walk through the wilderness together, they come to Bethlehem. Here's another poem. I think I'm going to skip over this for now for the sake of time, and it'll be here in the slides if you want to read it. I wrote a series of 21 poems over the last 2 years, and that was a large part of my healing, I think, and expressing of these different stages of grief and opening up and shutting down again, opening up. But here they are. They return to Bethlehem, and this, we're just going to really not spend so much on the time of renewal. As we read with Rabbi Jeremy, this weird construction, va tehom, it's the same word as occurs in the book of Genesis, tehom, the murmuring deep of everything that was there before creation. And so it's almost a confused murmuring as together Naomi and Ruth come into the town, and the women say, could this be Naomi? She's so changed. And then here's the other fulcrum. So Ruth has the beautiful poem that we're also aware of, Where You Go, I Will Go. There's also this poem of Naomi's that she says when the women address her, could this be Naomi? And she says, do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara, bitter. For Shaddai has embittered me. I full went away. I went away full. I had my husband and my 2 sons. That graphic we looked at the beginning of them walking to Moab. Her husband, her 2 sons behind her. But empty, Yud-He Vav-He brought me back. Why do you call me Naomi? For Yud-He Vav-He has witnessed against me, and Shaddai has wronged me. So here is that covenant, a different layer of that covenantedness that we talked about with Rabbi Jeremy, that even though Naomi is bitter, she is still in connection, in relationship with the divine. But here she chooses to use the name Shaddai for that aspect of God that has wronged her. Yud-He Vav-He is usually associated with Chesed in the tradition, but Shaddai is the God of the hills, the God of the wilderness, and also, as we know, that word means breasts. She has been wronged by the nurturing aspect of God. She's been left empty. So we won't really have time to get into the full renewal part of the story, which of course involves then Ruth and Boaz, and it's a complex story. But, and here's a bit of commentary again by Professor Jonathan Magonet, that this is a turning point, this poem. And I will just say that I went on the Grief and Growing retreat at the end of February, a beautiful retreat put together by members of our community. And one of the key moments for me in that retreat was that we had a small group of people who, kind of an affinity group of other women of my generation who had lost spouses. And what was truly healing in that group is we started to express our anger and our resentment and our bitterness. How could he leave me holding the bag? How could you leave me holding all this stuff? And it was great. We laughed together. We swore. We pounded our hands and stomped our feet. And this moment when Naomi expresses her bitterness is a turning point in the story. And from then on, Ruth goes to seek food. Naomi sets about finding her a husband. And we know the ending of the story, which we won't read together, but that Boaz accepts Ruth as his wife. They marry. She becomes pregnant. And here is the son that is born. And the women say to Naomi, "Blessed is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, who has not left you without a redeemer today. May his name be famous in Israel." And she becomes the nurse. She's the grandma, but in some sense, she is fulfilled through this. So I want to come back together. We just have a very few minutes. And there is a final poem that I would like to share. And we're already at time. But if there's maybe just a few things to say, or maybe we just want to breathe in silence, this is a lot, and we can go so deeply into a text. As Reb Irwin says, we can look at what the text is trying to say to us in the context of its own time, and we can come into conversation with that, with our own experience, and what we draw out of the text with our own lived lives. So, just take a breath.
Please share your poem.
Okay, let me share the poem. And I certainly would love to hear everything you have to say, or anything you have to say. But let me bring the poem up. And this is the last poem that I wrote, the most recent poem in the series, just a couple of months ago. And again, I'm not yet at the full place of the fullness that Naomi arrives at the end of the story and that Ruth comes to, but the energy is coming back. So the poem is Morning Light. Day's light creeps into sky and mind's eye. I have been somewhere else, a world of solemn meals, reckless joy, running in green woods, awash in spiral night, and now returning slowly, coming back. This chest of drawers, this potted ficus, shelffuls of books, emerging from the dim. Oh, we were there together, imagination leaping from this to that. Now, here I am, alone in morning, sucking still the breath of all one, into the unknown lung, tethering this day. I was somewhere else, and now, for better and for worse, daylight chuffs between the blind slats, and I am here. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for that little journey with me.
Rabbi Diane, I hope I'm not inappropriately moving forward, but I would love you to come back and do a teaching for us, and as part of our Beit Midrash, and maybe spend some more time sharing with us all the work that you've been doing, and maybe some of the other poems. This has just been so incredibly profound and deeply moving, especially for those of us who've had losses of significant partners. Your journey has really opened doors and windows, and I would hope we would continue to learn from you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you so much for coming
Thank all
and
of you.
joining us. Yes.
Hag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.